Hello, so welcome to a piano discussion or video. I wanted to talk about Schubert's impromptus again. So it seems to me that he did two sets of impromptus at D899 and D935. Now D899, apparently the first numbers, I think numbers 1 and 2 seem to have been written before, they were published before numbers 3 and 4, which I think were published posthumously, but in any case they were written in 1827, before Beethoven's death. And the other set, D935, were written after Beethoven's death. And we know that Schubert revered Beethoven as a composer. They both actually had the same teacher, funnily enough, in Salieri as a singing coach. I think, not a coach, but as a because Salieri was a famous teacher, and he taught them both something about the singing aspect of composition. So they both actually had that same teacher in Salieri, which is interesting. Anyway, we don't know if they met or not, but it seems to me that they would have done, because of the violinist called Chopin, who Chopin played both Beethoven's and Schubert's quartets, and there's documentary evidence of the quartets he played. And there's no doubt that they would have met, given that the same violinist played as the leader of the main quartet, called the Chopin Quartet, I think, which was the leading classical quartet. He played the Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Schubert, and someone called Onslow, and who's now not really known, but he was as famous as Schubert. Schubert was not very. I mean, the three most famous were Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven. But there's this person called Onslow, and Schubert, of course, and a few others who were fairly regular in the Chopin Quartet's annual subscription concerts. And anyway, there's a very good book that's been written by someone called John M. Gingrich, all about that. And it's very interesting. And so to my mind, they definitely would have met. In fact, Schubert dedicated one of his pieces to Beethoven, and the story goes that he left it at the door, being too shy to enter and talk to Beethoven himself. There's further evidence that Schubert told someone, I can't remember his name, but someone who came to visit in Vienna, and he's written about it, that he met Schubert, and Schubert said, if you want to see where Beethoven dines, come to this restaurant. He showed him the restaurant, and he pointed out Beethoven to him. So it's most likely that Schubert did meet Beethoven. He had a colossal influence on Schubert, although there's the documentary evidence that Schubert apparently was speaking highly of Mozart and denigrating Beethoven a little bit during the birthday of Salieri, who was, of course, their teacher, both of their teachers, and Beethoven did not show up for the birthday, but Schubert did, and Schubert wrote a birthday piece for Salieri, which everyone sang, and he sang in that piece, because everyone wrote a little birthday piece for Salieri, all his students. But Beethoven was not there during the concert. I think Schubert was a bit miffed, and he wrote in his diary, I think, how great Mozart's music was, and how he didn't like Beethoven's. It was too modern. But I think that was an anomaly in Schubert's general praise of Beethoven. And he quoted so much from Beethoven's music, of course, in Schubert's Ninth Symphony, although it might not have been his ninth, but we know it as number 9. He quotes from Beethoven's final movement, in Schubert's final movement as well, of his C major, great C major symphony, and he quotes is it the D minor Ninth Symphony of Beethoven? I think it's in D minor. He quotes that final movement. I don't know what key that's in, but in any case, he quotes there, he quotes here, there, and everywhere. Really, I mean, he's not. No, he definitely quotes in that symphony, but he also is obviously influenced by him. So, for example, in the first impromptu of D935, he opens with what's called a Mannheim rocket, which means any musical thing that goes up, basically. So, for example, Beethoven's Sonata Number 1. Or how it goes. You know, it's up. Schubert begins his first one just like that in the D935. Why? To show that he, like Beethoven with his first sonata, is starting with a new set of piano music, now that Beethoven is dead. I think that's the hidden meaning of that first impromptu, which is my favourite Schubert work. Although I also like the second Klavierstück and the first Klavierstück as well, actually. But I think that my favourite of all the Schubert, and I like the fourth impromptu of D899. But it doesn't matter what my preferences are. This first great impromptu of D935 opens with a Mannheim rocket, called Mannheim from the place in Germany, I think, or somewhere in Europe, where it was sort of thought up. And let me just try to play it. Yeah, so. It's a great piece, and I'd love to play it, but I don't think I have the time. So it actually begins like this. I'll have a look. Okay, so it's and so forth. There's that opening that I wanted to bring your attention to, which is just, it's very similar to the first sonata of Beethoven, which begins in that ascending way as well. Yeah. So that is Schubert's way of announcing that he is now to take over from Beethoven as the new composer for piano. And the reason that I say this is because if we look at the impromptus 899, how does he begin that set of impromptus, which was written just before Beethoven's death? So I think it's the last piano pieces that Schubert wrote before Beethoven's death, and these D935s are the first piano pieces that Schubert wrote after Beethoven's death. So let us go back to that D899. How does the D899 number 1 begin? For that set of 4 pieces, it begins with a funeral march to announce, sort of to herald the going away of Beethoven. It begins like this. Okay, So that's obviously the funeral. I mean, what an opening. There's G. There's great. There's octaves so widely spaced apart. What a dramatic beginning. It's more dramatic actually, I think, than the number one of the D935 set, which announces Schubert's coming on the scene. This is, well, they're both very dramatic openings with a specific message, and so that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. Okay, so yeah, that's my thought on this, on these two sets of impromptus. The beginning one of each has a specific message. Thank you very much. Just see how many minutes I've got here. Okay. I've got 17 minutes, so I'll just play a bit of music. Yeah, so lots of mistakes, I'm afraid, but that's it's not an easy piece. I've come to the conclusion it's not that easy, but it's a lovely piece. Another thought is regarding Chopin and Bach, because there is a mazurka which begins in a similar way to the Polonaise in F sharp minor, which goes I've forgotten how it goes, but that, you know the one I mean. It's the great Polonaise, the greatest, I think. Actually, on my channel you can see my effort at the A flat major Polonaise, which is another great Polonaise. But I mean, I can't play it, but I had a go at it, and it's on my YouTube channel. However, the F sharp minor one is I think his greatest. I think it's number 5, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, there's a mazurka which begins just like that. It doesn't end the same way, actually. I was hoping that that mazurka would end with the same big chord, 2 big chords, but it doesn't. But it begins in a very similar way, in that mysterious minor key, something like that. Something. It begins in a similar way. But yeah, that's just beside the point. What I wanted to say was, yeah, you can see references in Chopin's work, I think, between his other pieces. Like the mazurkas I heard were a kind of workshop for his bigger works. And I think that mazurka must be the preliminary sketch for that big Polonaise. I can't remember the number of the mazurka, but it begins in that sort of way. So I wanted to just talk about that fact. The way that Chopin worked. That was one way. He used his mazurkas as a creative workshop. L'atelier, as the French say, mon atelier or no, as a certain French poet says. But his other way of working is, I think, to look at Bach, because he is famous for really loving Bach's music, and he carried around with him the well-tempered claviers, number 1 and 2, I think, wherever he went, and he knew them very well, played them, and of course he wrote his own set of preludes, inspired no doubt by those, which I think were the only 2 books he took with him to Mallorca, where he went and wrote the preludes when he was ill, and towards the end of his life. Well, it was the end of his life. But anyway, they weren't written at the very end of his life. But anyway, they were inspired by Chopin, and there's one piece by Chopin which I think is inspired by a Bach lute suite, and it's that one that goes what is it? It's the yeah, it's that piece. It's that Polonaise. Dun 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 dun. That piece is definitely from the Bach lute suite. I can't remember. No, it's not a lute suite, but it's a famous Bach piece which goes da da dun da da dun. Is that not that F sharp minor Polonaise? So yeah, there are 2 references to that Polonaise: the mazurka for the beginning, and then the main sort of the main kind of marching theme of the Polonaises. I think from that lute piece, I can't remember what it is. It's a lute suite or some work which has been transcribed to guitar and it's quite well known. Okay, so thank you very much and see you later.